The second quarter unemployment figures will be released today. South Africa's official unemployment rate stood at 34.5% in the last quarter, with youth and women at highest risk of being unemployed. Our reporter Kopano Gumbi joins us now ahead of the release. Kopano, good morning. Good to speak to you. What do experts expect to come later today?
Yeah, Hugo, the picture is a little mixed this time going into the second quarter data. We'll remember that we've had two major economic shocks in the time since the last report was released. The first and most important being the floods that took place in KZN in April. And then secondly, we've had unprecedented levels of load shedding in the last few months as well. All of those are expected to have taken a knock on our economy, and many economists are forecasting that that's going to have an impact on our GDP that comes out later on. But that will also very directly impact employment, and how companies have been able to stay afloat during these difficult times will inevitably relate or translate into how many people they can keep on their books and how employment is looking. And so some experts are expecting that we're going to see an increase in unemployment again, back to the around 35% unemployment, which is an unprecedented level. Never had we seen that before in democratic South Africa, that we have such high unemployment. But you know, one of the biggest challenges that we see with the unemployment rate is that young people, and women especially, remain the most vulnerable to being without work or having some kind of job insecurity. And while we are on that, going forward, the trick and really the thing we're trying to focus on is how we can fix that, and how some people may not feel too disempowered or discouraged from looking for work, especially the young people. And I'm joined now by an expert in that very department, Ms. Fiona Martin. Fiona, thank you for your time today. Many young people feel like they're giving up on the job search. And I wonder how do they fortify themselves? How do they try and find something within them to say, keep going, let's keep looking for work?
Yeah, very correct, Kopano, and I think you used the word around discouraged, all right? And when it comes to job seeking, particularly for people that have been unemployed for prolonged periods, right, I want to just talk a little on what psychologically does that do to an individual, because then that's what links to the discouragement, the hopelessness, and not wanting to remain an active within the labor market. So generally, when people are unemployed or when they lose employment, it's not surprising that we find there's a higher prevalence of depression, anxiety, that comes with that, right? And of course, most of it aggravated by a lack of resources, lack of income. So in that regard, a lot of sense of personal failure, low self-esteem, low feelings of social worth, right? And also not being able to be economically active just has an impact on a person's identity. So imagine going through that for a prolonged period, and then on the backdrop of a very tough labor market, it's not surprising that many then become discouraged, which means they disengage completely from the labor market. So what can you do? Because, as we were saying earlier, as an individual job seeker, you have no control over the economy, over load shedding, and the many things that impact unemployment. But from an individual level, what you can do or what you can influence is, one, your mental well-being, right? And why is that important, right? Being psychologically well is not going to put food on your table, but what it will do is to ensure that you've got that mental fortitude to remain active. Because as obvious as it sounds, the only way to get out of unemployment is to remain engaged in the labor market, right? And that is through job seeking. And in many instances, some of the hindrances that occur are structural, right? Which are also very difficult for an individual to control. But some job seeking behaviors can enhance your capability on the job market. So, what are job seeking behaviors? So if there are a few jobs available that you qualify for, what you can influence is to ensure that your CV, your ability to actually find those jobs through the proper job search strategies, right, is as best as can be. Because as much as you can't control the market, which jobs become available, how many people get retrenched, you can influence that you are at least best placed to be available, you're at least best placed to compete for the roles that are available, of course, within your skills level. And through that, really, social networks have become quite important. We hear a lot around networks are everything when it comes to job seeking. And we also see research endorse the fact that social networks carry a lot of weight. It gives you social capital, which means that I have access to information, resources, referrals, jobs that are not advertised through social networks. So in some instances, we find that unemployment can cause one to lose social networks, to lose social capital. So that's also one way in terms of trying to remain engaged socially and can help around that, right? And that really is what is beyond your control in such a tough job market.
If we just were to give one key tip on how to look at your CV effectively, you see thousands of them all the time. What is the one thing that you see, the biggest error that people are making on their CVs that could easily be fixed and put them back into the top of the pile with HR, administrators, etc.?
Really good question, because lack of a good CV can actually hinder your ability to, compete, even if you do have, let's say, the right skills. So what I would encourage every person to do is find a person that's in the world of work. Right? It doesn't even have to be an HR expert. And ask them to look at your CV, especially if they're in your industry or the industry that you aspire to get into, and say, look, if you were to look at this CV, does this compel you to call the person behind this document, right? And get them to give you feedback. And I always say it's a free and an easy way for you to enhance your CV, because in many instances you can spend a long time applying for a job but not actually reviewing your CV. So if you do that with 2 or 3 professionals, ask them for a favor, you might then be able to at least get a way to improve your CV, if that, of course, is in fact what is hindering you from, being competitive in the job market.
Another thing that we rarely talk about is people that are over a certain age, let's say between 35 and 45-ish, who are looking to get back into the labor market after some time. They too sometimes are discouraged in a way that is quite overlooked. Mothers who've been at home possibly for a certain amount of time and now are looking to get back. Is there anything that they need to do differently, that perhaps upskill themselves in a different kind of way that could benefit them?
So age bias is very real within the workplace, particularly affecting young people and, people that are much older. So if you've been home for whatever reason, what I would encourage you to do is to start building networks in your aspired profession, right? So this means connecting with people, because in many instances, if you've been out of the world of work for a while, you might have been out of touch in terms of what are the latest skills, what do I need to be doing, who do I need to be speaking to, who can refer me, because referrals carry a lot of weight. So starting to build your network with other professionals is often useful, because then you can start to get information around what do I need to be doing in order to enhance myself. One way that we also find useful to build skills is to volunteer. So this is giving some of your time, or I guess the time that you have available, in order to ease your way back into the workplace, particularly if you've had maybe a huge skills gap or skills deficit from the last time that you were in the world of work.
Fiona Martin, thank you so much for your time this morning. Very practical tips, Hugo, as we await to see the outcome of the second quarter unemployment data. At least a few tips on those who are discouraged, those who are still actively in the market. Some very helpful tips from Fiona Martin on how they could go about looking for work, Hugo.
Absolutely, Kopano Gumbi. Thanks for your time this morning.